Hey, Vikings fans, welcome into another episode of the Skol Hop. I'm Evan.
I'm Austin.
We're just a couple of dudes from Iowa. We like drinking beer, talking about the Vikings.
We do. Skol.
Skol.
I knew that was going to be a halfway decent one when we were going into it.
Skol.
All right, Ev. You brought us a beer tonight.
I did.
Tell us about it.
So we've got the third installment of kind of our tour of No Coast Nitro Milk Stout.
Mm-hmm.
This is the S'mores Milk Stout. So if you've been following along the last couple of weeks, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we started with their cookies and cream.
Yeah.
And then we took a week off because your wife got us some beer.
Yeah, she got us the blueberry
graham smacker, which wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And then we took the coffee milk stout for a ride last week, and that wasn't bad.
Mm-hmm.
And now here we are finishing up the trifecta of these No Coast Nitro milk stouts, and we've got the S'mores.
Yeah.
And it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, I said it on our TikTok. It's my favorite of the three.
Yeah.
And instantly, like the first sip, I knew it was my favorite of the three. You immediately, when we opened it, you said, "Oh, there's the marshmallows."
You can smell it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely my favorite of the three.
And it's not a bad, like, overly sweet. It's like a good roasted marshmallow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even if you were somebody that didn't like even the best of sweet flavors or whatever in your beer, which is usually me. I'm not a sweet or sour or anything kind of guy, but like all of this is very pleasant. Even like right now, I've had a few sips and like it's still kind of with me, and I like it a lot. Like it's good.
Yeah, good stuff. So we'll definitely have some more thoughts later on once we get down to about here.
Yeah,
in the beer. We've only had a few sips so far, but so far not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Yeah. We'll talk about it some more. But the other thing we talk about on this show
is the Vikings.
The Vikings, yeah. Really the NFL as a whole, but mostly the Vikings. And been kind of a quiet week a little bit since our last episode. I think they've signed a couple of players. I think we just said Shaq. Is it Griffin?
Shaq Griffin, yep.
Somebody who I feel like has had a lot of hype in his career, but he's bounced around quite a bit too. So not a veteran minimum type contract. I think it's something like $4 to $6 million is what he's going to make with the Vikings this year. But I mean, I think when he signed, Dustin Baker had some stat where it's like, yeah, this stat, if he were on the Vikings, like this stat of his from last year, if he were on the Vikings last year, it would have made him like first or second in like, I think it was like quarterback rating against or something. I don't know. But, I mean, maybe he'll turn into something decent. Maybe not. Time will tell with that one. Yeah.
Other than that, though, pretty quiet week. Not really many signings, nothing major, nothing like earth-shattering that's happened. Of course, we're all kind of waiting in anticipation for the draft to see what happens.
Yeah.
That will be a big deal, and that's pretty much like a month from now. Like I think a month from right now, we will know,
hopefully,
who the Vikings drafted in the first round.
Yeah.
And what happened with all of that. Because as it sits right now, on March 25th, they've got those 2 first-rounders.
11 and 23.
They traded for Houston, or with Houston, for that 23rd pick. And they're expected, I think, pretty unanimously to move up.
Yeah, load those up. Hopefully not much else, and get up into the top picks. It's funny to be on Twitter right now where anybody and everybody can have an opinion, including us, and seeing like these Patriots fans, they're like, all right, yeah, I guess I'd be okay with trading 3 to the Vikings if it was their first. Their 2 first rounds this year, the first round next year, and then obviously JJ. Like, that's insane. JJ would get their next 3 first round picks just by himself. Like,
right.
Like that's kind of crazy. And somebody would call me crazy for saying JJ would take 3 first round picks, but I don't think his price would be too far off of that. But yeah, it seems like we're in a time, as Vikings fans specifically, but really all around the NFL, that the pressure is kind of building a little bit, especially with that trade for the Texans first round pick, especially since we're still kind of waiting on that Justin Jefferson contract. Like, I don't know that there's any news that we should expect that right away, but that's something that could drop any minute, anytime between now and hopefully before the season starts. Obviously the draft is coming up, and every day you hear something different, like, oh, the Commanders actually do like JJ McCarthy, or, oh yeah, nobody wants to trade for the Vikings picks. But like, it's all a little bit different, and it's exciting to be a fan, but it's also kind of terrifying because you don't know. The future of the franchise will look a lot different 1 month from now than it does right now, and that's scary.
It did seem like Kevin O'Connell, he indicated in his interview today that JJ has been kind of looped in on those conversations. He's been involved in some capacity. Obviously, we don't know like to what extent, but obviously when you've got arguably the best offensive player in the league on your team, and he's a wide receiver, you need to involve him in that process. You need to keep him informed on, hey, this is who we're going to target in the draft, or hey, this is what we're going to do, to bring in an arm to throw to you, whatever the case might be. So
for sure.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, but kind of tense because we don't know what's going to happen, and anybody can speculate anything.
So you have a lot more time on your hands than I do typically, at least to read things.
Sure.
So you've thrown together some articles here that I haven't had time to read.
Yeah.
And we've got our notes here in front of us. You've given me the headline.
Mm-hmm.
What did you texted me earlier? You wanted me to just like give my reaction to the headline?
Yeah.
How did you want to do that?
We'll just read the headline and have you kind of riff on it for a minute and see what you think they're saying and how you feel about that. And then I'll kind of give you a brief synopsis of what the article actually says.
That's fair.
There's 3 of them. All 3 I pulled off of VikingsTerritory.com. I believe 2 of the first 2 we're going to talk about were written by Dustin Baker. And then the third one was a Yannick Eckhard post. So yeah, let's see what you think. So the first one we've got, kind of in this whole thing is like, should the Vikings even trade up in the first round? So first one, the article is for the Vikings trade, everyone is open for business.
Everyone in all caps.
Yeah. Well, what do you think about that?
All right. Well, it would seem to me that the headline is suggesting here that because the Vikings have 2 first rounders, almost every team, especially any team with a top 10 pick, should be listening to the Vikings when they call, saying, hey, here's our offer. What do you think? And I think for the Vikings, at 11-23, I mean, if they can get into the top 5 for only those 2 picks and maybe one other kind of lesser pick, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that would be a bargain for the Vikings to get into the top 5.
Yeah. You kind of hit the nail on the head. Basically, what Dustin's saying in that is like, yeah, it might not be so much that the Vikings are going to have to fight hard to gain one of those top picks. Sure, the first overall pick, that's out of the question. The Bears aren't going to trade it to the Vikings, and the Vikings wouldn't have enough reasonable capital to get to the first pick. Second pick, I mean, probably about the same. Maybe a little bit easier to get, but still probably almost like unreachable. But anywhere from like 3 to 5 or 6, like those teams arguably should be open for business. They should be listening, because usually when a team trades a high first round pick back, they'll swap the pick and then probably get the first rounder for next year, unless you're Kwesi in his first draft with the Vikings and you're trading down with the Lions. But we don't have to bring that up right now. But the Vikings, if you're trading with the Vikings right now, you're getting 2 first round picks. Like, you're swapping, and then you're also getting this year another first round pick this year. So that's kind of sweet. It's pretty nice, and I think it lessens the idea that the Vikings would have to give a first round pick next year as well in any trade. Could that happen? Sure, it might, but like I don't think it's a for sure foregone conclusion that the Vikings would have to give up 2025's first round pick in any trade. So yeah, that was the first one.
I just have to piggyback off of that really quick because you said Dustin wrote that article, and I saw a tweet of his this morning. He said, you know what, maybe all these teams saying they're open for business, the Commanders, the Patriots, the Cardinals, the Chargers, maybe they're all in a mad dash to do business with the Vikings. That is, there's competition, and he emphasizes competition to grab the Vikings trade haul. For a week and a half, we've wondered who will actually trade with the Vikings. Well, perhaps it's all of them. Perhaps, the doors are wide open, and whoever's got the best offer is going to put pen to paper and ink a deal with the Vikings for these first rounders.
And I think that tweet may have been his inspiration to write this article, or that article could have been inspiration for that tweet. It's the same thought process.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's why I wanted to bring it up, because it was definitely connected.
Yeah. So the other article I have, or the second one I have, is also by Dustin Baker. And it's kind of a warning from that first idea where everybody could be looking to trade with the Vikings. It's kind of a warning, but we'll read the headline. I forgot what we were doing here. I was about to explain it, but I want you to guess what it means. The title is Vikings evidently have a quote unquote warning about trade. What do you think?
I think that could mean a couple of things. I think it could mean that their guy isn't in the top 10, and maybe I wouldn't be a fan of this, and it would probably crush the souls of Vikings fans everywhere if they waited until pick 11 to do anything.
Oh man.
But maybe Michael Penix is their guy. Maybe he's the one that they're going for.
Everyone just probably turned off the podcast.
I'm not saying
right
that's what I want. I'm just saying perhaps,
sure,
crazier things have happened, right? I think the other thing that it could mean is maybe they're going to ride with Sam Darnold for a while, see what happens there. And maybe the trade with the Texans wasn't to trade up and get their guy at quarterback, which again, I think all of us would say that's a huge mistake.
Oh yeah.
If they don't do that. But perhaps that could be it as well. And maybe they're not willing to, I don't know. Maybe there's a specific trade they want in the
Vikings.
Top, in the top 5. And if they can't get it, deal's off. We're just going to stay at 11 and 23 and get who we can get.
Yeah. Darren Wolfson on Twitter, he has I think he replied to somebody in a tweet today or yesterday recently, because there's that idea from last year's draft that apparently the Vikings were all in on doing everything they could for Anthony Richardson. And somebody tweeted at Darren kind of asking about that. Was that right? Was that true? Or is that, just more noise that it's out there? And Wolfson basically said, they were if he fell past a certain pick. And obviously Richardson didn't fall. So kind of like what you just said, if the Vikings, they have a plan, they have a guy, and if he's gone, then they're not going to trade the farm. Because, maybe I'm rolling my eyes at the idea of the Vikings, their guy being Michael Penix or Bo Nix or whatever. Maybe that terrifies me as just the random fan on the street. But I've always also said, the Vikings just need to pick a guy and do whatever it takes to get him. And if they know, let's just say Penix is their guy. It doesn't seem like you'd have to move up from 11 to get Penix. You might even be able to wait until 23 to get Penix.
Right. Some of these guys will fall.
Yeah. So if that's the one that they've been targeting this whole time, and the only way to really know is if they trade up and they have a few guys available to them, it would be really telling to know they had both Drake May, JJ McCarthy, and Michael Penix available to them, and they still went with Penix. That would be super telling, because then we know they have told the world we had our pick and we picked the one guy. So I don't know, maybe we all really don't ultimately know what's going on behind closed doors up there, but it's kind of scary, because how many people would be super pissed if it is Bo Nix or Michael Penix. Vikings Twitter, I'd just log off for a while.
Hopefully not, but I don't know that there's been a draft class like this in the history of ever. I mean, it's kind of crazy how, one, how many quarterbacks there are, and two, how many quarterback needy teams there are in the league. And so going back and referencing Dustin's tweet that I brought up a few minutes ago, like the competition is fierce.
Oh yeah.
And I think GMs in all of those top 10 picking teams understand what's at stake, and they know that the futures of their franchises are also on the line, and it could come down to, who do we pick? I mean, there could be a Peyton Manning or a Tom Brady or, somebody like that ready to go. One of these guys, one of these quarterbacks could be that next generational talent that just completely flips a franchise from bad to great.
I mean, shoot, I just saw a TikTok that outlined, it was a video of every draft pick before Pat Mahomes, the year he was picked. And obviously that year, the Bears drafted Mitch Trubisky number 2.
Yep.
And it was funny because they played a few second clip of, the commissioner would read the pick and you'd hear Rich Eisen give a couple second reaction. And they did that for all, 9 picks before Pat Mahomes. And wide receiver John Ross was picked before. He was 9th. He was picked 9th to the Bengals before Pat Mahomes at number 10. And the reaction to Pat Mahomes was like, oh, okay. I mean, he's decent, but I don't know. The Chiefs are doing something weird here. And obviously you couldn't have known, because if you redo that draft right now, people are selling Pat Mahomes stake in their franchise to be able to sign him. But we could be super pissed at whatever pick they make on draft night, not realizing it could potentially be the best thing the franchise has done in their entire history, and vice versa. We could be jumping for joy. What if they get Drake May? What if somehow they get Caleb Williams? That's not going to happen, but what if we'd be jumping for joy, and then that could theoretically be the worst thing they ever do? It's interesting, and you never really know what's going to happen until they start playing games.
So the third and final headline says something about worst case scenario.
Yeah. So before that, just to give you what that second article was actually about, I think it was more that, and I think you kind of touched on it too, that all the teams that would trade back with the Vikings to go up and get their guy, that may say more about these quarterbacks than anything. Because if you're Washington and you have the second overall pick and you're basically outside of one person, you have your pick of the litter, and you still decide to trade back, that's kind of telling too. Just like the Vikings, if they had all options and they picked one of the guys, that's pretty telling on who it would be. But why would Washington trade back? They won't. But I could see why the Patriots would trade back, because they need to load up their roster for the future. But it might be telling. Maybe these other teams aren't sold on the other guys, on these quarterbacks. So that's essentially what that article was about. Hey, be careful. Why would all of them want to trade back? So the third article was by Yannick Eckard, also on Vikings territory. It is, what if the Vikings' worst case scenario happens? So what do you think that one means?
Well, and I think we've already kind of touched on it a little bit. They don't get their guy. Maybe they do trade up, and they trade up prematurely, and they're targeting Drake May or J.J. McCarthy. Those are kind of the two most popular names in this narrative right now. But maybe they get all the way up to 4. They trade with the Cardinals to get the 4th pick. And McCarthy and May go 2 and 3 to the Commanders and the Patriots, which is a very realistic possibility. At that point, the Vikings have spent a whole lot to get up to that number 4 spot.
Yeah.
For nothing, or at least for not the guys they wanted, right? So, I think worst case scenario, they don't trade up, they stay where they're at, and maybe they don't take a quarterback right away. And maybe that's not the worst case scenario, but maybe that's just not what everybody envisions they will do. And I think there's a big difference between what we as fans think is best and worst case scenario, and what's going through Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah's head right now as best and worst case. Like, we could be spitballing all this stuff sitting here drinking a beer, and he's just sitting there laughing like, you have no idea. Like, I've spent like countless sleepless nights thinking about this. I know exactly what I'm going to do, and I have plans A, B, and C, and I have contingencies for each one of those. And
I sure hope so.
So, I would hope so too. I mean, the dude's really smart, and he's getting paid a lot of money to manage this team. But I don't know. Worst case scenario, I think that happens. You spend your 11th and 23rd pick to trade up, and you still don't get your guy.
Yeah,
that's the worst case scenario.
That's franchise altering.
Yes.
So essentially, you had a really good idea, but it's not exactly what the article is saying. Basically, it's saying the Vikings didn't get the opportunity to trade up. Like, just nobody trades with them, so they have to stick at 11-23. Honestly, I think if they miss out on the opportunity, if they really are trying and they just can't get a deal done, I think there's a chance they trade back from 11 or 23. Like, I think they try to recoup some capital loss and try to get as many picks as possible. But the article is basically saying, like, okay, in the world where you're just blackballed, you can't trade up at all. Nobody's going to do a deal with you. All your quarterbacks are gone, and you're sticking at 11-23. Yannick proposed taking University of Texas, Byron Murphy. I think Byron Murphy the second, so we'd have two Byron Murphys on the
that would be
on the roster. A defensive tackle, he's elite. Supposed to be elite. Obviously, with all these rookies, you never know.
I watched a video from his pro day today. He's a beast.
Yeah.
Like, he's just an animal.
Yeah. So he'd be really good, but I think most Vikings fans want a quarterback over an elite defensive tackle, even though defensive tackle is a need for the team. And then after that, Yannick was saying at 23, you could still get a Michael Penix.
Right.
Of the two, Bo Nix or Michael Penix, I think I would go with Michael Penix, but again, as we'll say a trillion times, we're just a couple of dudes in your basement drinking beer. Like, we're no expert or authority on anything. But
yeah,
I'd be very upset. If they walk away from the first round of the draft with Bo Nix, I'm going to be very upset.
That could be worst case scenario.
that might be.
That could be like a Christian Ponder signing.
Oh, man. But I think you came up with an even worse case scenario than Yannick did in the article, where you do trade up and you still don't get your guy. Yeah, and then you're just
honestly,
stuck.
Like, I can't think of a worse possible scenario. Like, honestly, the one proposed by Yannick in the article, that doesn't seem half bad.
That seems like the safe, and of course he's saying the worst case is not being able to trade up. So what do you do from there? And you have your insurance policy in Sam Darnold. You also have Nick Mullins, who has starting experience. You have Jaron Hall, who's, I think most Vikings fans would take or leave him at this point. But like, you still have three quarterbacks on the roster that can start and at least be serviceable, and hopefully don't throw 4 picks in a game. Never give a guy a chance to throw 4 picks.
But I honestly, like, not drafting a quarterback in the first round, to me, isn't the worst case scenario. I think getting that pick from Houston and taking the 11th pick and Houston's 23rd pick and getting up into the top 5 and not getting your guy, that would be bad. I
think I got to disagree a little bit. I think if they come away from this first round without one of the top 4 quarterbacks, there's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy. I think if they come away from the draft without one of those guys, or at least Michael Penix, I think that is the worst case scenario. Like, I think because you have just let Kirk walk, granted for a contract that the Vikings would have been just stupid to match or assign something close to it. You have not gone after another elite level quarterback. I mean, Sam Darnold, this is probably his best outside of the Niners last year. This is probably his best team he's been on or around. Definitely the best one he's been, because he's currently the starter. That definitely the best one he's been labeled as a starter. If you come away from the draft without one of those top 4 guys, that's where the knives and pitchforks are coming out, and everybody's saying, all right, already Kwesi Adofo-Mensah needs to be gone. Like, I don't know if I agree with that, but it would be the worst case scenario to not get one of those guys, to me. I mean, it would be so deflating.
So to kind of wrap up this segment here, you got to play a little game where you had read the articles and I had to guess.
By the way, go check out those articles.
Yeah, for sure.
I know we're kind of simping on VikingsTerritory.com right now a little bit, but they do good stuff, and both of those were quick and nice and entertaining reads. You should definitely check them out. I don't know if we'll tweet them out or we'll post them in the show notes, but definitely check out VikingsTerritory.com.
Yes. Yeah. Very trustworthy.
Yeah.
Vikings source. So I stumbled upon this on Facebook. I have 3 trade scenarios here for the Vikings to get into the top 5.
Okay.
I want you to know what you would prefer of these 3.
Ooh, okay.
You can't change anything. You just have to roll with
what the package is and
what the offer is. So, number 1, this is the Drake May trade.
Okay.
Well, that's what it's labeled. You can call it whatever you want, and you wouldn't necessarily have to take Drake May, but the Vikings would get the number 2 overall pick.
Oh.
They would trade to the Commanders a 2024, both of their 2024 first rounders, so the 11th and 23rd, and their 5th rounder, 177th overall, as well as a 2025 first round and 3rd round.
Okay. So that's quite a bit. I would say if you're going to number 2, that's the whole package right there.
That's
the Vikings,
5 picks for 1.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. I think value-wise, that's not terrible. I don't know, like, that's so not terrible that I don't think the Commanders would do it. But let's just pretend we're living in a world where this is what they've done for any quarterback. Like, if they do that, like, the guy they pick is the guy they want, because Caleb Williams is already gone. Like, as of right now, he's basically already off the clock. So it's just, they're essentially trading for the first overall pick at that scenario because the first one's already done. And whoever they pick at that one is the guy they wanted. So I'm comfortable with whoever it would be then, unless it's Bo Nix.
Yeah. Definitely not.
If that was it, 3 first-round picks, 2 5ths and a 3rd, essentially? Is that
1 5th and a 3rd.
1 5th and a 3rd?
It's 5 total picks. 3 first-rounders, 2 non-first-rounders.
Yeah, I mean, sign me up for that one right away. Instantly.
Interesting. All right.
Because also in that scenario, if the Vikings did that, they know the guy they want, they're not going to get unless they leapfrog the Patriots.
Yeah.
Like, that tells you enough right there too. So, yeah.
All right. Number 2, I won't give you a title on this one.
Okay.
That's
fine. I'm good with it. Just to get the pick.
No bias.
Yeah, sure.
So the Vikings would get the number 5 overall pick. Obviously,
with the Chargers. Yeah.
Obviously working with the Chargers. And all they would give up is this year's 2 first rounders. So they would just swap the 11th and 23rd picks this year for the 5th overall pick.
Yeah, I mean, sign me up there too. Unless, because in that scenario, the Bears have Caleb Williams. The Commanders have chosen probably Jaden Daniels is the name everybody's hearing for them, which could be a lie. Nothing you see, you can hear it from the owner's mouth right now, and it could be a just blatant lie.
Smoke screen, for sure.
But yeah, Caleb Williams to the Bears, Jaden Daniels to the Commanders, and then probably another quarterback, Drake May or J.J. McCarthy to the Patriots at 3.
You got to wonder if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes to Arizona.
Well, that's the only name I've heard people talk about with Arizona, because they're not picking a quarterback. They're either going to pick Marvin Harrison Jr., unless they're secretly in love with somebody else or they trade with another team. But let's just say they keep the pick there. They're probably picking Marvin Harrison Jr. unless they hate Kyler Murray and they're just going to go move on from him with a different quarterback anyways. But yeah, that scenario, it's probably Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah, at that point, you have either Drake May or J.J. McCarthy, whoever the Patriots didn't pick, probably. And all it cost you was the 2 first-round picks.
One of which you already had.
Yeah.
And the other one you traded with Houston for a pretty good deal to get.
Yeah, sign me up for that. I'm good with that.
All right. Well, keep in mind, you have to tell me which one you want the most.
Oh, I thought we were doing this individually. Okay,
well,
so...
Yeah, oh yeah. So
I think I like that one better than the first option.
Okay.
But I'm still good with either.
So the third one, 2024 first rounder to the Vikings. They would get the number 4 overall pick.
Okay.
This is with the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
They would also get a 6th round pick from the Cardinals this year. And they would give both of their first rounders to the Cardinals for the number 4 overall pick.
So the same deal, just with a... I don't know why that would be a sweeter... Like, why they would also get...
I think it's just because it's 1 pick higher than the Chargers. It's the number 4 overall pick.
Yeah, but in that scenario, the Vikings are getting more.
True.
For the same price. I mean, sure, yeah, there are Hall of Famers that come out of the 6th round all the time. I mean, look at Tom Brady, but essentially you can't bank on a 6th rounder even making the team. So that to me is kind of a throwaway thing. Yeah, I would do that in a heartbeat. Definitely before that. So far, that's my favorite of the options, just because that's a better deal than the second one that you said.
True, you definitely get more bang for your buck. You get an additional 6th round pick.
Mm-hmm.
And you're only giving up this year's 2 first rounders.
Yeah. Okay, so I guess thinking about, is that all? Are there any more? Okay.
That's it.
So you could either sell the farm for the 2nd overall pick.
Yep.
Or get a really good deal for either the 5th or 4th overall picks.
Yep.
Man, that's tough. Because if I see the Vikings sell the farm for number 2, that says a lot about what they think they're able to get. Like, that tells me the Patriots have said no. Like, they've just straight said no to any trade, and you're afraid the Patriots are going to pick the guy you want. So if that's the case, then you gotta pay for that. So I don't know. I wouldn't be mad at that. I'm going to go with the third one you said, with the Cardinals. It gives you future ability to correct any mistake you might make. But sure. if the Vikings theoretically are only going after one guy and they hate all the other ones, which I don't know, I haven't heard anything for that to be the case. I don't know why that would be the case. But if they only want one guy, then you got to do whatever you can to get there, and that would be the 2nd overall pick option. But yeah, for the sake of the argument, I'd go for that number 4 overall pick. What about you? Which one would you do?
I'm with you. I think that last one. So that last one had the title of most realistic. I do think the Cardinals are the most logical suitor for the Vikings. Now, the Cardinals would probably have to be okay not getting Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, Marvin Harrison Jr. is gone. Probably to the Chargers.
Yeah, he's a top 10 pick easily.
Yeah, if I'd say Harrison, he's either going to the Cardinals or the Chargers. Like, he's not going to make it past 5.
Yeah.
Unless both of those teams trade out for QB needy picks.
Again,
that's the only reason.
Because the draft this year is so competitive, you never know. I mean, everybody has a price tag, and I think the Cardinals and the Chargers both have a price tag to move out of the top 5.
Oh, yeah.
If the price is right, they'll say, yeah, go for it. Just like we said, well, yeah, we'll do that. We'll give up 11 and 23 to get into the top 5. No problem. And I said it earlier, and I'll say it again. I think if the Vikings can package those 2 picks, bundle them up, ship them off to whoever, and get into the top 5, as long as they can get their guy in the top 5, then Kwesi has played chess very, very well.
Yeah. Did you hear, because I think I saw something on Twitter, which, again, you can never really know or trust really anything you see online, but I thought I saw that the Texans approached the Vikings about that trade initially. Like,
they might have.
That they were the initiators, and the Vikings were the ones to be like, sure, yeah, let's go. What do we got to do? Which almost kind of makes you feel a little bit worse about that trade. Like, why would the Texans approach it. But either way, like the ending is the same. The Vikings have 2 firsts and are able to package and move on up. Hopefully move on up to get their quarterback of the future. I think that's what everybody expects. I'd be shocked if it didn't happen.
Yeah. But, I mean, crazier things have happened on draft day.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
All right, well, it'll be interesting to see what happens a month from now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, all of our speculation could just end up going out the window.
Yeah.
I mean,
we're just a couple of dudes and really just following a bunch of other dudes on Twitter.
That is true. So the league meetings have started. Yeah,
there is some up-to-date NFL news that we're getting even today. Pretty interesting stuff. One major, I think there were 3 official rule changes today, but the big one is obviously the banning of the hip drop tackle.
Yep.
What do you think about that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I want to read, because you have the definition here. You did a little research, and this is what the rule would be. Mm-hmm. So it says, to be considered illegal, the tackle must meet 3 criteria. Mm-hmm. Which, let me pause really quickly and just comment on how difficult that's going to be for NFL officials.
Well, think about like the catch. Like there's many criteria that have to be meet for a catch. And most of us, like, sure, if you listed out everything, like what is a catch, it might look complicated, but I'd say the overwhelming majority, even we know the rules. Like, okay, you got to maintain the ball into the ground, and if it touches the ground, it's okay as long as you have like full, like it doesn't jiggle, or you have full control of it. You got to make a football move after two steps. Like most people can understand that concept.
My point is, like, one, kudos to NFL referees for the extremely challenging job that they undertake every time they put the stripes on and go officiate a game. And 2, it's just, this is going to take a while.
Yeah. And I hope the refs and the league understands that and kind of eases it in.
So I'll finish the definition. The tackle must meet 3 criteria in order to be illegal. The defender grabs or wraps the runner with both hands or arms, which I don't know how you tackle somebody without doing that.
I mean, you can have a one-handed.
I know.
Like a horse collar is usually always just one hand. And that's
only one of the criteria. 2, he unweights himself and unweights is in quotes, unweights himself by swiveling his hips or lower body. And I think that's the core of the rule. And that's where, like, they're grabbing around the guy's trunk, and then the tackler just
drops their weight.
Yeah. So there's that, and then lands on the offensive player's legs below the knee.
Yeah. So I think that 3rd criteria, that's the key.
Yes.
I think you're still going to see guys not get flagged and make legal tackles by basically, what they're saying is like wrap their arms around, their hands around another player, basically like hugging them. Like hugging them and then just making their legs go limp. Or like swiveling their body, making the bottom half of their body just go limp, so that the ball carrier is just fireman dragging a 200-pound man, or however much. But I think the key, and I have it bolded here, is and lands on the offensive player's legs below the knee. So I think one of the players that responded on Twitter to this rule change was Kenyon Drake, and he posted like a video of him, because he's a running back, of him in 2021 being tackled via this hip drop tackle, and the defender rolls over as they're both going to the ground. The defender's body just rolls over Kenyon Drake's ankles and breaks one of his ankle. And that's where Kenyon Drake was like, I lost my season and a bunch of rehab, and like that's what this rule is all about.
Yeah.
So I think you're still going to see guys like from behind maybe hug and then lose their weight, but as long as they don't like
land on the
roll
player
over the legs or ankle of an offensive player, that's where you're going to see the refs be like, that was legal. And I hope they call it like that. Just like the whole quarterback, we were all up in arms for years after you couldn't
put your body weight on the quarterback.
They were trying to protect him. But once I think everybody understood, and I agree with this, I don't know your thoughts, but like, you can't be a 300-pound defensive tackle running at a quarterback, hugging, and then just straight putting all 300 pounds of your body into the force of that quarterback. That's where that rule is coming into play. Just like this one, I think as long as you tackle somebody without, or at least making an effort of not rolling over their ankles, you're not going to get flagged.
I did see something on Twitter today that seemed to suggest maybe that, and this is probably just, it's not probably, this is for sure the opinion of the author of this tweet, but the person, I don't even remember who it was. It was just something I think I scrolled past, but they said that this is just another attempt for the NFL to garner results, to fix results, to make things happen the way that they want them to happen in a game. And when you brought up the quarterback rule, the sacking rule, I still think there's a lot of subjectivity in that rule.
Yeah, I think there is too. I also think that rule has gotten, and disagree with me if you think I'm not right, I think that rule has gotten a little bit mellowed out. Like,
it has.
The intent of that rule has kind of been flushed out, and it's being called, for the most part, the way that rule was designed, and not just as like, we need to protect Aaron Rodgers at all costs. Like, I think they're starting, it's been a few years now, like they're starting to call that in a fair way.
Yeah. But wasn't there a play this season, though, that the Vikings were on the wrong side of that? I feel like
there was. Of the quarterback type thing?
Yeah.
Maybe. I can't remember specifically.
I feel like there was. I feel like it was a Kirk Cousins hit. He went down, and we were all just like, where's the flag? That should have been called. And
there was a specific intentional grounding call that Kirk had. It was basically a screen pass to CJ Ham, and Ham basically touched it, and they still called it intentional grounding. I don't know. That's what comes to mind when I think of terrible calls against the Vikings this past season. But yeah, I mean, I think this rule will be called. It might take a year or two. There might be the Vikings might lose a game based off of the way this one's called. Like, that's probably going to happen. Maybe not to the Vikings, but like, it's probably some team is going to lose based off this call.
Yep.
And it's going to be some growing pains.
And I think if you're a defensive player, specifically a defensive back or a linebacker, you have to be much more cognizant of how you tackle.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There will be adjustments that will have to be made for sure.
Many defenders came out on Twitter today and voiced their opinions to Vikings. I mean, Josh Metellus, he had a few tweets, and intelligent tweets, not like, this is so dumb. Like, he actually was talking about it and like bringing up good points about how he doesn't agree with it. Harrison Smith, somebody like asked him how he felt about it, and Harrison even like broke it down like, as a human, I feel this way. As a man, I feel this way. As a defender, I feel this way. You know, it was kind of funny, but these guys aren't being quiet about it. They're voicing their opinions, and they have valid points. But
Harrison Smith tweeted, they just say they banned the tackle. Hip chop doesn't need to be included.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's definitely like one side of this issue is some people see this as, well, they're just continuing to soften the game of football, and you can't hit a guy anymore. You just can't do it. And I don't know that that's entirely true, and I'm not on that side.
Yeah.
But I'm on the side of like, these rules should be as objective as possible, so that if you have an understanding of the game, if you're an official who studies the game and is paid to make objective decisions about the game, you can't help but not make the right call.
Yeah, you should be able to pull up the video and be like, right there.
Yep.
That's why it was called like this. Yep. Yeah,
I used a lot of like a triple negative in how I described that, but like, it should be that clear. And in real time, things move quickly, and that's where I feel bad for NFL officials, is they have to make those decisions in a split second when things happen. But with video replay and everything, and now they've got people in New York that are looking at everything too.
That was another rule change.
I know,
which was awesome, and I think it could save this rule change about the hip drop. It could save games. It could save a lot of things, because essentially there's somebody in New York that can override. Is it any call?
I don't know. You've done more reading on this than I have, so. But I like that a lot, and I kind of teed you up to bring us into that because I think that's a necessary thing in the league today, and I think especially in the last 2 years, we've seen so many games that have hinged on horrible officiating, and I think people are sick of it. I know I'm sick of it, and you can't necessarily blame the refs. There's just not a system of accountability for them. They make the calls, and what they call stands, and if that affects the game, so be it. And so I think adding another level of accountability,
absolutely, just make it fair. Like, how many times have we seen the Vikings lose off of the other team scoring a touchdown, and we're super mad, but some calls you're just I mean, how do you defend that? They made a better play, they did the thing better than the Vikings, so obviously the Vikings lose. But that feels way different than if a referee runs into and tackles a Vikings player in Washington and then the Commanders score a touchdown off of that, but there's nothing you can do. So that's when people are these referees are changing the game just by themselves. So like you said, if they can make the referee's job as objectionable as possible, then it doesn't feel as bad if your team loses off of a great play by the other team rather than a yellow flag by the refs. Everybody who's ever rooted for a football team has said, oh, well, my team just couldn't beat the refs today. At some point in their fandom, that's something we've all said.
This is going to get really nerdy for a second, but I read a book. I think it was by Mitch Albom.
Okay.
He wrote Tuesdays with Maury and the 5 People You Meet in Heaven.
Okay.
Might have been by someone else. I can't remember. But anyways, it was one of those New York Times bestseller, not necessarily self-help books, but it was meant to be inspirational, let's say. And he told the story of how there was an Asian country. I forget what country it was. I'm blanking on a lot of details in this story, but we'll get to the core of it. He told this story of this Asian country who had astronomically high airline crash rates.
Oh, okay.
Planes just were crashing left and right, and lots of lives were being lost. And it took several years and several psychologists to figure out what was going on, and sociologists too, I think. They figured out that in this particular Asian culture, respecting your superiors was a very high priority. And so what ended up happening in a lot of these plane crashes was the captain had made a mistake, had made an error. And the second captain, or whoever the right-hand man to the captain is in the cockpit, culturally didn't feel like he could make the correction and say, hey, you made a mistake, we're going to die. And it took them years, and it took, how many plane crashes before they figured this out.
That's crazy.
Where they had to train these pilots, if your partner makes a mistake, you need to step in and say that he made a mistake. Otherwise, you and everyone else on that aircraft are going to die. And it took a while, but they eventually righted the ship, and now that country doesn't have nearly any plane crashes, right? And I think that's the level of accountability that needs to be obviously the NFL isn't life or death.
No, but, not always.
I feel like that's kind of the way it is. The refs, they make the call on the field, and that's what it is. And sometimes somebody needs to step in and say, no, that's not actually what happened.
Absolutely. And I've said it on this podcast. I'll say it a million times. I actually think the refs, overwhelming majority of the time, make great calls. Lots of times they see things in real time, or at least have relied on their training to be able to know what should have happened. They see things and call things correctly in real time that you and me, we need slow-mo replay to make sure they got the call right. And usually it's I guess the guy did kind of step out there. Most of the time, these refs are making the right call. It's a job most people can't do. I couldn't be a ref for a 6th grade flag football game, and I wouldn't want to. But I would also think most reasonable people, when they make a mistake, would welcome a respectful intrusion and somebody else saying okay, I'm not saying you're terrible, I'm just saying he didn't step out of bounds then, or that was pass interference, or most people are welcome to constructive criticism every once in a while. And if I wonder how many times a ref has actually gotten a call wrong in a scenario where that call can't be changed, so all they can do is just kind of take it. But I did find the change that we're talking about here. Tom Pelissero tweeted and said, this is big. NFL Competition Committee Chairman Rich McKay told me the replay assistant will now be permitted to correct certain types of incorrect calls for roughing the passer and intentional grounding. So not every single call. Sounds like it's just those two types of things, but that right there, the ability to change or correct a roughing the passer call or intentional grounding, would have directly benefited the Vikings at least once last year. The time that I was talking about where Kirk he threw an incomplete pass to CJ Ham. It was called and upheld on the field as intentional grounding,
even though it hit the hand of an eligible receiver.
Or at least came very close to hitting the hand. It was close enough that it was not intentional grounding. So if this rule had been in place, somebody could have come in and said, no, from this angle you can clearly see it wasn't intentional grounding. The idea of roughing the passer probably comes up more often. That'll help. If they can make the game better and not just muddle everything up, I'm all for rules changes that makes it better. How many times have we said, we can see it plain as day on TV, how can they not see it on the field? So this is a step in the right direction.
Agreed.
And I'm all for it.
Agreed. There was one other big change. I'm sure there are lots of other little changes that we're unaware of. Mm-hmm. But looking at, and I think maybe it won't happen this season, but if it doesn't happen this season, I definitely think next year it will, is a change to the kickoff.
Yeah, so I think I saw on Twitter they could be voting on this change as early as tomorrow. So we're recording on Monday night. They could make this vote Tuesday the 26th. By the time people are listening to this could already be news that it either has been made or they voted against it. But essentially they'd be adopting the XFL kickoff scheme, where the kicker kicks off from the same point they always have, the 35-yard line, and all of the blocking and advancing, I don't know, what's the word for the kicking team?
Coverage team.
There it is, the coverage team. They would all be lined up at the opposite 40-yard line. And a returner could only return the ball if it lands within the red zone, the 20-yard line. Mm-hmm. And then obviously if it goes in the end zone, it'd be a touchback. But it lessens the amount of space these players have to just missile run at each other while the ball is being kicked to the returner. I also believe nobody from either team can move
until the ball has been caught.
Yeah, other than obviously the kicker and the returner. But yeah, all of the blockers and coverage team, they couldn't move until the ball has been caught. So,
and I think that's interesting because the coverage team, the kicking team, seems to have an advantage looking at the player. They get to move maybe a half a second earlier than the return team who's covering for their guy. Mm-hmm. They have to maybe wait and react. If they're looking down the field and not looking behind them at their guy who's going to catch the ball, they have to react to what they're seeing the other team do in front of them. So it will slow things down for sure, but it will still preserve
the speed of that play. That's what you're saying, right? That play will slow down.
That play will slow down in a way that preserves player safety, I think, and I still think it helps preserve the overall just aura of the kickoff.
Yeah,
it'll be different.
It'll look way different, but I think as a fan, it won't it's not like they're removing the kickoff. Like there is still a chance to return. I'm sure the details are out there, but I don't know what that means for the idea of an onside kick. Again, yeah, I'm sure it's been laid out there if you could do something else, because you still have to have the ability to at least get a chance to get the ball back after you score a touchdown. And again, I haven't read up enough about that, so there probably is some specific wording to that, but we can figure that out. But yeah, I'm personally for it. I liked when the XFL did it. Yeah, I don't know. Are you thinking you like it, or are you not for it?
I've seen the XFL do it, and the optics are different. I mean, when you look at it, when you watch it as a fan, you're like, oh, that's weird. And it almost seems like surreal, because you're just used to, like, as soon as the ball's in the air, everybody's moving. And that's not the case with this new setup. As soon as the ball's in the air, everybody stands still and waits and waits and waits. And then, once the ball is caught, then they start to move. Like, it will take some adjusting for sure if this is what they end up adopting. And it definitely seems like they're leaning this way. I like it, though. I like it for player safety, and I think players are advocating pretty heavily for this, especially the guys that are the ones back there returning the kicks, because they're in the direct line of fire. I'm not a fan of the fourth down opportunity. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Where they would be like, the kicking team would really just be an offense on like 4th and like 20 or something like that.
And if they convert, they get to keep the ball.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that. I think, like you said, I think every team should have the ability to possess the ball after the opposing team scores a touchdown. Like it should trade possessions.
Yeah, but I mean, how many times have we hoped, like, oh, the Vikings need 2 touchdowns, they'll get a quick touchdown, and hopefully we pray for that onside kick. Like, there should be some semblance of that quote unquote onside kick.
Yes. I don't know that the 4th and 25.
Sure. Yeah. There's probably a better,
the best option for that. But I don't know. I'd be okay with a change like this, with the XFL kickoff rules happening even as early as this season. I think that would be a fine change. I don't think it would be too crazy. That it would honestly, I think this is less crazy than the hip drop tackle.
I think most people would be for this.
It seems pretty easy to adopt. It doesn't seem like it'll be that big of an adjustment for fans or players. Yes, it will be an adjustment, but not. I mean, it's not going to change. Like, Harrison Smith is going to have to change the way he tackles.
Yeah, which he's had to do like 4 times throughout his career.
Right, and he still gets flagged every once in a while for hits, because he's, this bullheaded, rough, tough, I'm going to go after him, and it's going to hurt me and it's going to hurt them, but that's how you play the game of football kind of guy. That's who he is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I hope they make this change. And this seems to be one of those kinds of changes that they make, and when they do it, they say, okay, for this season, or even for this preseason, like it's not an immediate permanent change, but I feel like we see it for a season, maybe 2, and then they adapt it full time if it works well. That's enough time to work out the kinks, because maybe there's something we haven't thought of, like, oh yeah, this actually is terrible for whatever reason. I don't know, but it'll be fun to see. Hopefully they vote to at least temporarily approve it tomorrow. It sounds like could be the chance.
Yeah, and I would be 100% on board with definitely adopting it in the preseason, seeing how that affects things, and then, maybe they don't do it this year during the regular season. Give it a little more time for some R&D, and maybe see how the new UFL handles that kind of this off season for the NFL. But yeah, I'm for it. I like it. I like that better than the hip drop tackle, just because it seems like it wouldn't be as difficult to fold into the game.
Yeah, so, for sure.
You said you liked the hip drop tackle, though.
No, I think
the rule.
So it's that third point of the criteria. If it's called the way that I'm reading, it's going to be where they have to land on the offensive player's legs below the knee, like that's a defining criteria of throwing that flag. I think if that is called to the rule, it won't be that big a deal. And again, if you can eliminate as many possibilities of a guy breaking his ankle, sure. Just like the horse collar tackle. I'm sure a lot of people were up in arms, 20 some years ago, where they've officially made the horse collar tackle illegal, but that's not something we hear a lot about anymore. Like, we're also not seeing a lot more broken legs like you used to with the horse collar tackle. Like,
I'll never forget you would have been playing. I think you were playing this particular day. We were in 7th grade.
Oh man,
football.
That would have been the last time I would have actually been on the field on playing football.
Me too, because I quit after 7th grade.
No, I kept going. I just never saw the field.
Anyways, there's a particular classmate of ours who ended up becoming quite the football player.
Yeah.
He was notoriously one of the only sophomores to play varsity when we were sophomores.
I think he was a freshman that got bumped up in the playoffs, if it's the same guy I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Anyways, I'll never forget it. I was injured for the last game of our 7th grade year because I was the smallest guy on the team, and I got bulldozed by another guy in our class the game before and hurt my wrist or something. I don't know. Anyways, I'm standing there on the sideline watching my team play. I think you played on his team.
I did, yeah.
In 7th grade. He grabbed one of the guys and just ripped him down to the ground. I mean, he was a man amongst boys.
Yeah, dude was probably pushing 6 foot in 7th grade.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It was absolutely nuts.
No, I went against, he wasn't a defensive lineman, but on one play in practice, he was a defensive lineman, and I was an offensive lineman. And as soon as that ball was spiked or snapped, he reached over, grabbed the back of my helmet, and shoved me straight down to the ground. And I just didn't even know what to do. Like, I'll never forget that. Like, how do you defend that? And I don't think he got called or in trouble. It might have been like hey, don't do that. Like,
yeah, I know he didn't get a penalty.
He was bigger than the coaches. Like, in 7th grade.
He was a full-grown man. He still holds some records.
Yeah.
Football and baseball. He was a pretty good baseball player.
Yeah.
He got walked a lot. I think that's I look at the record boards all the time because I spend a lot of time in the gym. But yeah, when we're talking about horse collar tackles, that's like a core memory of mine. And I was standing right there. Like, I was within 5 feet.
Did he get flagged for
the tackle? No. No, he did not.
Was it in a game or in practice?
Yes, it was in a game. I was on the sideline because I was injured. I probably would have been in the game if I wouldn't have been hurt.
Sure.
As free safety, as the 98-pound dripping wet free safety. That was with my pads on.
Yeah, there you go.
That's why I quit.
Yeah. I was always heavy, but not always tall, so I didn't get on the field very often after 7th grade. But that's okay. And look at us now, Ev. Look at us now.
Well, I like a lot of what we've talked about.
That's what I want every time.
That was a good one.
That was a good one.
That was a really good one.
What'd you think? What'd you think of the beer?
I really like this beer.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish this one, obviously, and then we'll have successfully made our way through a 6-pack, which is pretty typical on a podcast night. But I like it a lot. The richness of the flavors just doesn't disappoint.
Yeah.
It's definitely got all the elements of a s'more. It has the marshmallow, the chocolate, the graham cracker. Mm-hmm. I still think it has a little bit of peanut butter in there too.
I never got that, but that's
it's just me. Maybe I'm weird that way.
You're not weird.
Peanut butter's not a bad thing though in this kind of a beer. So I like it.
Yeah, that's true.
I would highly recommend any of these nitro beers to anybody. No Coast out of Oskaloosa, Iowa. They've got the cookies and cream, the coffee, and the s'mores. They're all nitro stouts.
They're all delicious. And this is a true statement because they're not a sponsor.
Correct. Yes.
Yet.
But if you want to be, let us know.
We'll take all the beer.
But we've really enjoyed this. We've made our way through all 3 of them now, and I would pick this up off the shelf on my own just for a weekend or something, or if I was going to go hang out with friends or family, like this would be something I would get. And I would say, hey, you guys would like this, and I would recommend it to other people. Yeah, it's good stuff. Yeah, so.
The S'mores one is my favorite of the 3, but they're all home runs. They're all really good. And I've said it before, I'm a bonfire guy. Sit me in front of a campfire every night if you could. That'd be awesome. And this just seems like the perfect end of the night bonfire beer. Like, yeah, I will be having a few bonfire S'mores Nitros this summer for sure.
Indeed. Well, thanks No Coast for some good beer. We've enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
We'll have to have some more No Coast on the show.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. They're all great.
But we've got some other beer that we're excited to try.
Yeah, we are. Too. Check out next week. That beer is hopefully going to be amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. But we'll leave it at that for the 4 of you that are still here. It's going to be good.
All right. Well, good beer, good chats. Till next time.
Skol.
Skol.
Hey Vikings fans, Evan here from the Skol Hop, and we just wanted to say thank you again so much for listening to the Skol Hop, and we also wanted to take one more opportunity to let you know that this episode of the Skol Hop has been brought to you by Big Top Ventures. If you're considering taking an all-inclusive trip to either Mexico or Jamaica, reach out to our friends at Big Top Ventures at bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. Once again, that's bigtopventuresllc@gmail.com. You can get the lowest rate possible on several all-inclusive resorts throughout the region. Big Top Ventures. Step right up to your next big adventure. And thanks again for listening to the Skol Hop. Skol.